30, Republic of Saka, 2017. That number sat in my notes for a long time before I did anything with it. 30 wood bison, loaded onto cargo aircraft in Alberta and flown east, past the Urals, past everything familiar, and set down in one of the coldest inhabited places on the surface of this planet. I accepted the official explanation without much resistance, a species exchange, a conservation gesture between two governments with a shared interest in keeping a threatened animal alive. I wrote it down, filed it, and moved on. Then I looked at the follow-up data. 8 months after those animals were released into the Siberian lowlands, 8 months into their first subarctic winter, without supplemental feed, without veterinary oversight, without any of the management infrastructure they had known their entire lives, the researchers who returned to survey the site were not measuring survival rates. They were measuring soil temperature. And what those sensors recorded in the ground beneath the bison's range did not match any model the team had prepared for. The animals had not simply adapted to the landscape. The landscape had begun, in measurable and replicable ways, to respond to the animals. I want to be precise about what I am claiming here, because the claim matters. I am not saying the bison saved the permafrost. I am saying that within 8 months of their arrival, the thermal profile of the soil beneath their range had shifted in a direction that decades of human engineering intervention, carbon capture infrastructure, experimental albedo modification, billion-dollar geoengineering proposals have not been able to replicate at any meaningful scale. A 2,000-pound grazer, doing what 2,000-pound grazers do, appeared to be running a climate function that we had classified as extinct. The question I could not set down was a simple one. If the official story was species conservation, if this was only ever about saving a threatened animal, then why were the scientists measuring the ground? Hold that, because the answer, when it comes, does not arrive from the conservation record. It arrives from a place much older than that, and from a man in Siberia who has been quietly, methodically, and with very little institutional support, trying to restart an ecosystem that the world agreed 10,000 years ago was finished. To understand what happened in Siberia in 2017, you have to go back to a place most people have never heard of: Elk Island National Park, 90 kilometers east of Edmonton. Roughly 200 square kilometers of fenced parkland in what was once one of the most ecologically rich grassland systems on the continent. That fence is the detail I keep returning to. By the early 20th century, wood bison had been reduced to fewer than 300 animals on the entire planet. A single herd, surviving almost by accident. Elk Island became their refuge, a managed population, a controlled environment. The kind of place you build when a species is so close to the edge that the wild itself can no longer be trusted to hold them. What no one advertised was what Elk Island had quietly become. Not a sanctuary, a vault. Here is the mechanism, and I want to walk through it slowly because it is deceptively simple. Arctic snow is not just precipitation, it is insulation. A winter snowpack acts as a thermal blanket over the ground beneath it, trapping residual warmth from the soil, preventing the deep cold of the atmosphere from penetrating the permafrost below. This is well-established physics. What is less discussed is what happens when something removes that blanket. Bison trample snow, compressing it, destroying its insulating structure. And when that blanket is gone, the winter cold, sometimes reaching -50, drives directly into the ground. Let me say that again more slowly. The animals are not warming the permafrost. They are freezing it harder, every winter, with their feet. What I haven't told you yet is what the wood bison actually is. The official classification is straightforward. Bison athabascae, a subspecies, North America's largest land mammal, threatened, protected. What the classification does not foreground is the deeper lineage, because the wood bison is the closest living relative to Bison priscus, the steppe bison, which spent hundreds of thousands of years as the dominant grazer across the entire mammoth steppe, from Western Europe to the Yukon. One continuous grassland, one continuous herd. That ecosystem vanished roughly 10,000 years ago. Its primary engineer went with it, until Elk Island held the line. If this investigation is raising questions you aren't finding elsewhere, consider subscribing. What's coming next is where this gets harder to explain away. Here is what I want you to hold alongside everything we've just covered. In the same decade that 30 bison were airlifted into Siberia, Canadian wildlife managers were simultaneously shipping Elk Island genetic into the Yukon. American ecologists in Alaska were separately advancing proposals to restore large grazers to subarctic range. Sergei Zimov in the Republic of Sakha was documenting the same thermal mechanism independently in Russian in a journal most Western scientists weren't reading. 3 nations, separate institutions, no shared program, all converging on the same prehistoric solution at the same moment. I am not claiming coordination. I am asking something more precise than that. When independent scientists on 3 continents simultaneously decide that the answer to a modern crisis is 10,000 years old, what does that tell us about the crisis? There are currently 14 free-ranging wood bison populations on the planet. 14, against a permafrost system covering nearly a quarter of the northern hemisphere's land surface. We have found the mechanism. We understand what the animals do. We have the soil data, the thermal readings, the methane flux measurements. We have watched captive-born bison, animals that have never seen tundra, arrive on the steppe and immediately, instinctively, begin trampling snow as though the behavior had simply been waiting. The experiment is not unfinished because we don't know the answer. It is unfinished because we have barely begun to ask the question at scale. If this investigation is reaching somewhere you haven't been taken before, share it. The next video goes to the mammoth. I wasn't sure I was ready for that. I think I am now.